Hello and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. Now, tonight on the show, we'll discuss bullying in Malaysian schools. This is against the backdrop of a recent landmark decision by the Federal Court that underscores the legal duty on schools and the education system as a whole to prevent bullying. It also raises the critical questions as to the effectiveness of anti-bullying campaigns, the existing anti-bullying campaigns, and also what is our collective responsibility to protect our children from harm in schools. So joining us on the show tonight, we have Dr. Mohamad Naqiuddin Dahamat Azam, who is a senior lecturer with the Faculty of Human Ecology at UPM. Dr. Naqi, thank you for being on the show with me today. Bullying in schools, we've been talking about that for a long time. It's been long been a concern, especially when we have full-time residential school settings, right? Can I ask you what you consider are the most pressing challenges when it comes to addressing the issue of bullying effectively?
Okay, firstly, thank you for inviting me for this segment. So I think one of the most, which I think the most pressing issue is not about, because when we talk about bullying, we are always concerned about the campaign, especially to address this one. I think that's actually enough. We have like many campaigns that have been done right now. I think it's like no bully, like anti-bully. We have I think a lot of efforts have been invested on that kind of like campaign and etc. But I think one of the issues is that how actually because when we want to address this, it's more about how we can convince all the stakeholders, not just about school, it's not just about students, about the teachers, but how actually all that which includes the community, which include many stakeholders that actually should give their own efforts. Okay, and then one thing is that one of the big challenge when we talk about all this, of course, people will put many in sort of kind of like bin, especially when there are bullying cases. People will say that, so this is actually more towards the school, more towards the behavior, how actually the school respond. But I think one of the challenge is that how actually school perceive the situation and how they react towards it.
Okay, that's interesting. If I may just jump in there very quickly. So we'll look at the other stakeholders and how they can also help address the issue of bullying. But let's talk about the duty of care that schools have to prevent and to address bullying cases. When you say that schools need to look into this or do more, what do you think they need to do? I hear of schools having zero tolerance policies against bullying in schools. Does that work? Is that effective?
I would say in one way, yes. Yeah, the zero tolerance I think can be helpful, especially when we are not truly tolerate towards the behavior. Yeah, of course, bullying is a negative behavior, and of course, why we should tolerate towards that. But one thing I think that for me is actually school is truly, they are responsible in making a school safe. The school are actually the place where kids learn, student learns. Okay, so but the thing is that one of the big challenge is to provide a safest environment for the student. And of course, the zero tolerance is actually, I do agree in some point of it, but how about how we can create a sort of direction? If we say like, I think mostly in most cases we can have sort of like empathy towards the victims, right? So we help the victims, but how about the perpetrator? How about the bullies? Okay, it's not like I'm siding the bullies, but is it like all these things we can just give them like punishment? Yes, the punishment is actually a kind of lesson that they should have. But is that going to solve that problem in one way of it? So I think in one part, yes, the zero tolerance is actually good for the school, but to make sure that we can capture this in a total, I believe that we should again try to dig what are actually the real reason behind their behaviors.
Right. I like that you brought up that point because bullies are raised, they're not born. So let's talk about that. Many cases, bullying behavior is rooted in trauma, psychological trauma, deeper issues, social dynamics, mental health issues. How do we think about that and how do we address that at its root?
Okay, for the social dynamics, I believe that that's actually how we can see bullying situation, especially when we talk about the social differences between the bullies and also the victims. Okay, usually they have, of course, they have the power difference. Bullies is much more towards, bullies are usually much more powerful, but it's not in terms of the physical. This is much more towards they have their own followers. They are quite popular in one part of it. So in one part, this can actually create a sort of situation what we call as bullying. Okay, one is actually more powerful or more dominant than the other. Okay, and in one part of it, how we can address this sort of power imbalance, I believe like this is actually, we need to provide a sort of like encourage positive leadership. So instead of having competition, for example, between one and one, so how about having a positive collaboration between one and another? So I think people, even for the student, they will see, oh, this is more towards encouraging, for having like more towards friendly relationship, for example. So I believe this can help in this part.
Right, and when we think about bullying in today's day and age, very different from, you know, when I was in school, from maybe when you were in school. Today, bullying doesn't always stop when the school day ends. Bullying on social media is such a real thing for young people nowadays. How are there ways for us to tackle bullying both inside and outside the school environment?
Yeah, talking about this one, I think, yeah, of course, bullying today can be more, I believe, different from like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, especially now. I think we have the social media, right? It's not just the physical is actually the limits of bullying, but now we have the unlimited spaces for bullying. So we have, for example, previously it's much more toward the tradition one, just like kind of like beating, like punching and everything. But now we can send harsh messages, for example. We can give a sort of threat just by sending a message. And I believe that this is much more towards the broad area. Now it has no boundaries at all. And of course, I believe in one part, if this happens, situation happen, I believe this is much more to have. I think we should have a sort of like a good support system, especially when it happens for the school student. I believe that the counselors can play their own roles, knowing and then try to get, if it even involve a sort of like mental health issues. So I believe that the counselors know where to bring. And I believe, and at the end of it, I still believe that the community should play important roles, because nowadays it's not just about the school, the parents, the teacher, and the student, but the community should be proactive as well.
Okay, well, let's talk about the students then, because a lot of the existing anti-bullying campaigns focuses on how to empower students to be active bystanders. So when they see something happening, they become active bystanders who intervene in cases of bullying. Are there ways to strengthen that so that students feel they have a voice, they should speak up for those who are being bullied?
Yes, I believe in many cases, if you talk about bullying, many, there are actually a group that we call bystander. But I think in most cases, there are more towards specific bystander. They just witness the behavior and nothing. Because I believe that, because since if you talk about the physical bullying, for example, of course, students see a lot of things, especially something that can bring trauma towards them. So to address in this, especially to make a student become an active, or I would say, of course, active bystander. I believe that, I think we have the in our educational system, we have a sort of support system called pembimbing rakan sebaya. Because I believe that if we can empower them, I believe they can do help in try to solve, even though it's not 100%, but I believe there can be a sort of assistance towards this problem. Yes, towards this problem. Yeah.
What message do you have, Dr. Naqi, to the people listening tonight? So you talked about the need for the entire community to be part of the solution to bullying, prevent and address this. What message do you have to the parents of students, so not just those who are being bullied, but to the parents of the bullies themselves? What message do you have to educators and to school administrators and to the community at large?
Yeah, I think since we have like a lot of people, like we have parent educators, but I do have, I think, one message which I believe that hopefully this can give some meaningful message to them, especially in do not normalize bullying. Yeah, I think this is actually because when we talk about, because I think there are sort of trends that people say like bullying should be existed because they can create a sort of resilience. Yeah, in one part. But I think in a way, like, okay, you can be bullied, but and then you can create a sort of resilience. You will a better man, for example. But they may be not the true, I would say, because for some people it can be sort of like that. But for some people, especially for the victims that traumatized a lot with that one, perhaps they have the lowest self-esteem that they can have. So I think, please do not have this sort of thought, do not normalize bullying. So just create a sort of model for respectful and inclusive behavior, especially for them, because usually the student or younger people, they learn from the adults. And of course, in one part, one of the ways sometimes they imitate our own behavior, they follow their own model. So create a positive behavior. So at least we can start this at home. We can start this at school. So in one part, hopefully this can create a more safest environment for school.
Thank you so much for speaking with me. That was Dr. Mohamad Naqiuddin Dahamat Azam from UPM's Faculty of Human Ecology. We're going to take a quick break here and consider this. We will be back with more. Stay tuned. Hi, welcome back to Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris. Let's continue our discussion about bullying as we unpack the recent federal court's decision that asserts that educators and school personnel owe a duty of care to supervise students to prevent bullying while they are on school premises. Now, joining us on the show to discuss the implications of this legal precedent and to discuss its impact on our education system and explore the path forward to create a culture of safety and respect in our schools, we have lawyer Mohamad Akram Abdul Aziz. Akram, thank you so much for being on the show with me, joining us today. Can I begin our conversation looking at bullying from a legal standpoint? How do we think about the recent federal court decision? What responsibilities do schools in Malaysia have in ensuring the safety and well-being of students when they are on school premises? What is their duty of care?
Well, I suppose the recent federal court's decision is a welcome one, because it shows the court is being proactive pertaining to bullying issues. What we do know in Malaysia for time being is that we do not have a specific laws pertaining to bullying. We do have some of the legal provisions that has been used for different types of bullying. But of course, in terms of whether we do have like a specific anti-bullying law 2024, no, we do not have. So when the federal court decision came up, they imposed a duty of care to the schools to ensure the safety of the students. This is, I think, an important thing to note, because previously there are gray areas pertaining to what are the responsibilities of the schools, whether they are responsible to take care of the student safety and whatnot. So with the federal court's decision, it is clear cut. When it comes to bullying issues, the school is vicariously liable together with certain other government sectors
Right. What does that mean? What does that look like in practice when schools are liable for bullying cases that happen on school premises?
I suppose it's more of a practical one because, as we do know, this is something that is unfortunate, but we do know that bullying happens, whether it is like asrama penuh, the full hostels, or just your residential school. Bullying does happen, but more often than not, when the bullying cases happen, sometimes the school will try to like hide the issues, try to sweep it under the rug, so to speak. So now, when the decision of the federal court is out, it imposes a bit of a burden or gives some pressure for the school to take more proactive role to try to prevent bullying from ever happening.
Right. So you mentioned a bit earlier that Malaysia doesn't have a specific law provision for anti-bullying or to address bullying. In cases where bullying leads to physical or psychological harm to students, what legal avenues are available for the victims and their families? How do they seek justice? Under what laws would that fall under?
I suppose it depends on the types of bullying, because bullying can happen physically, but sometimes the bullying can happen psychologically. So there are types of bullying whereby the person who bullies the other person doesn't use any force or any bodily harm. They just use like hurtful words and try to strike emotional damage to the victims. So it depends really. But when it comes to legal action or legal protection for the victims, they can actually seek either civil action or the criminal path, the criminal law way of enforcing their rights. Because we do have certain provisions that's not, I'm not saying that it caters directly to bullying, but it is applicable to bullying. For example, when it comes to civil action, i.e. we proceed with the engagement of a lawyer to sue the other person or the person that bullies you, you are claiming more often than not assault or battery. So assault is something that is non-bodily, while battery is something if the person is being hit. So you can actually go to court and sue the person that bullies you and claim for things like damages, to claim for compensation, and to claim for like prohibitory orders or injunctions.
So,
yeah.
Sorry, just to follow up. So does that mean with this legal precedent of the federal court, that means that if schools fail to take appropriate action to address bullying, does that mean that schools have now also can be held accountable for compensation?
That is correct. From what I've viewed the grounds of judgment of the federal court, that is the case. So when a person is being bullied and he or she proceeded with legal action, he can actually sue the school as well, or even the teachers for some vicarious liabilities issue. So if the case is proven in court, he provide the plaintiff or the person claiming for the compensation provided enough evidence, and the case is decided in his or her favor, so the school might be liable to pay some damages.
Right. Nowadays, with social media and lots of cyberbullying happening online, how are there legal protections for that, or is it only physical harm when criminal behavior that's related to assault and to harassment, for instance?
We do have some provisions of law that is applicable pertaining to cyberbullying. Cyberbullying, I think, is prevalent nowadays. Not just students, but even elderly, even children below age. They are using all these online means, and I don't know whether they do know their actions or not. But when it comes to the offences pertaining to cyberbullying, we can always rely on provisions like the Multimedia Communication and Multimedia Act 1998, because we do have specific provisions to curb the offences relating to cyberbullying there. And there are cases that has been proceeded in court by MCMC. They are prosecuting people that have been misusing the internet, like making vulgar remarks to the other persons. So yeah, when it comes to protection, we do have it. It's just that, as I mentioned before, it's not directly related to bullying. but it is related to the offences that might be relevant to bullying.
Akram, can I ask, in your experience as a practicing lawyer, what would you consider or have observed as some of the kind of common challenges or obstacles that arise when a student pursues, or a student's family pursues, legal action in cases of bullying? What often are the challenges that they face in seeking recourse or seeking justice?
I suppose when it comes to seeking legal recourse in the court of law, one thing that a person may have to consider is the cost at the time. Because, of course, when it comes to proceeding for civil action, when you want to claim for damages or for injunctive relief, you need to engage a lawyer to represent you. So some lawyers may take the case on a pro bono or free of charge basis, but I suppose it depends on a case-to-case basis. But when it comes to the time for the case to proceed, it will take a really long time, because the court process, there are a lot of procedures in Malaysia, and of course you do have that right to appeal. So if the person that bullies you lost the case, for example, at the High Court, he or she might file an appeal to the Court of Appeal, like what happened to the Federal Court's decision that we discussed just now. So that case started back in 2019, 2017, and you see the decision from the Federal Court is in 2024. So how many years for the process to occur before you gain that justice?
Well, what do you think will change after this federal court decision when it comes to the way schools and administrators and policymakers, even education policymakers, how do you think this will change the trajectory of the way our entire education system deals with the issue of bullying? What would you like to see, not just from a kind of legal perspective, but from a policy perspective, to address this perennial issue of bullying?
I reckon that the decision of the federal court would mean that the administration of the school will take serious steps to try to curb all this bullying and whatnot. Because I view that even if we do have, I do advocate the enactment of a specific anti-bullying law, but at the end of the day, the law is as good as the execution or the enforcement. You cannot expect a law to be enacted and then the issue will resolve. This is an issue that stemmed back from the society, I suppose. I do not know the exact reason, but it seems that bullying has occurred way back when I was in school. I trust when you were in school, the bullying did happen. Yeah, and until now, without any end in sight. So hopefully, with the federal court's decision coming in, the administration of the school will take steps to curb the bullying, and then probably it will hinder potential bullies from doing whatever they want to do on the victims because of the repercussion, the legal repercussion that they can see now.
All right. So just a quick one. You said that you'd like to see an anti-bullying law be enacted. Yes. What would it entail? What would it look like?
Something that is specifically curb the bullying issue, because like we discussed just now, when it comes to bullying, whatever the provisions that we do have currently, like the one in the Penal Code, like the one in MCMC, the Multimedia Communication and Multimedia Act, we've been using that. But that is, those are not the laws that specifically caters for bullying. Those are the laws that are catering for the cyber issues. Those are catering for the criminal issues. So I'm hoping that by the enactment or the existence of a specific anti-bullying law, it will cater to issues that have been ongoing in schools and universities. And hopefully we don't see any unfortunate news whereby students pass away due to being bullied. Like I remember back then, the late Zul Farhan Osman. Yeah, that is unfortunate. So I'm hoping that those kind of issues will be eliminated in the future.
Thank you so much for speaking with me, Akram. That was lawyer Mohamad Akram Abdul Aziz wrapping up this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris, signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.